Hello and welcome to Sam's Regenerations. Here we have a Matchbox Lesney Marshall horsebox. It's actually Mark 7. It was manufactured in 1957 originally, and it's got a bit scuffed, losing a lot of paint, and it looks like it's been repainted with the grille at the front. A little attempt there by someone, a previous owner. It is missing its door, as they most commonly are, so I bought a new one from modelsupplies.co.uk. They make brand new parts, lots of different vehicles they make parts for. A little bit of flashing on the hinge section there, but it's a really good match, so I'll put that to one side. Underneath, unlike normal matchboxes from later time, they have a split rivet rather than the normal punched rivet. So we'll need to use a screwdriver and a hammer and just tap the sides, and that will condense the split pin enough so that we can actually remove the undercarriage. It doesn't take too much effort, just be careful not to scratch the embossing underneath. It does come off quite easily, as you can see. Let's put that to one side. I used a heavy duty cloth in a vise just to stop the vehicle from moving as I was tapping it. Here I'm using a Dremel with a little grindstone on it just to take the nub of the axle off. On matchboxes you often see that one side of the axle has a much larger head on it and one is a lot smaller, so I'd go for the one with smaller. Have a much easier time of it. This axle's got a little bit of rust on it, but I won't take too much effort to get rid of. I keep all of the small parts like wheels and axles in a little container like this for safekeeping. With the painting of the vehicle, we need to strip all the old paint off. I've been using this dial paint and varnish remover from B&Q. It's their own brand, it's quite effective. You just put it in a Tupperware box and splosh some on, and then move it around with a brush that you don't care about too much anymore. Try and get in all the nooks and crannies, and don't forget to go underneath in the cabin area. I normally leave this overnight, and you see it's all completely blistered, and the paint will come off quite nicely. So I just use a toothbrush and some soapy water to clean it all off. Actually neutralises the chemical effect, and it's quite satisfying seeing it come off in big leaves of paint. Gloves on, and you can just get right in there with the brush to take away all the paint from the front section there, like the grille and the door. Now take your time removing all the paint. I use toothpicks, sewing pins, screws, anything just to get rid of all the little tiny flecks of paint. And after a while you'll get results that look like a bit like this. After you've removed all the paint, you can go ahead and prime your model. I've been using this Tamiya Fine Surface Primer. It's the light grey version. It's really quite effective and very fine, like it says on the tin. Just put on small passing coats. I put on 3 or 4 coats on this model. Really effective. You can still see all the tiny little details on the sides there. Here I'm mixing the burgundy colour that I'm going to be using on the cabin of the vehicle. I used some of the Tamiya X7 Gloss Red and a few drops of the X4 Blue to try and get the burgundy colour that I wanted. And I used some of the paint from the model on some white card to colour match. So here I'm just adding a bit more red to each time, trying to get as close as I can to the burgundy that was originally on the model. Took a few attempts, but got there in the end to a colour that I felt that I was happy with. I mixed my paint in an old small jam jar, and so I just put the lid on just to keep it safe and keep it from drying out for later. Now I'm just doing the last of the colour matching for the main box of the vehicle, and it's very small increments, but I'm quite happy with the result there. I've used Kinder Egg capsules to mix paints and store them for up to a day or two. Keeps them quite fresh. And I'm just putting a few thin coats of the beige all over the model. Still maintains all the details on the sides there. Here I'm just finishing off the new door with a file. I've already snipped off the extra flashing from the moulding with a pair of snipping pliers, and it's just to make sure that it's all nice and smooth, ready for priming and painting. To remove the rust from the axles, I put the axles in an electric drill and just slowly spin it round with a bit of wet and dry. Does the job quite nicely. My wife got me these paintbrushes for my birthday, and I think they'll do quite nicely for the details on the grille and the headlights. The paint I'll be using for the grille and headlights is this Tamiya X11 gloss. It's a chrome silver. It needs a good mix before I start applying it to the model. I practiced painting on the silver headlights on this Hot Wheels car, and I'm pleased with the fineness of the brush. Now for the real thing, just adding the small amounts of paint at a time. The hardest part was getting it all in frame for the camera. The light on the right could have been a little bit neater, but overall I'm quite happy with the result. I left the car parts for a couple of days for the paint to cure, and now it's all ready. I can go about removing the super glued on screw that held it in place whilst it dried. Comes off quite satisfactorily there. Just leaves that circle bare, but that won't be seen inside. Time to assemble all of the parts. Now the first thing to do is to put on the ramp door. It has these two little nubbin hooks on either side that you just need to slot into place in the main horse box section. And then you can go about adding it to the cab. Now the back of the cab needs to slide in with the little slot first, and then you can push down with your thumbs or fingers, and the split pin should just go through the slot on the far side. Apply a little bit of pressure, making sure the ramp stays in place. And there you have it. It won't actually come apart now. The split rivet stays in place quite nicely. It has enough friction, so it shouldn't have any accidents. And the door stays in place, which is a nice surprise actually. I thought it might just flap open, but it doesn't. Just attaching the tyres now with the axles. Can be a bit of a fiddly job. Now I don't have a drill press at home, so I can't really use the Marty's method of fixing the wheels to the axles. So I used a little bit of solder with a soldering iron. Now I know this solder doesn't actually adhere to what I assume is the aluminium on the axle. I did manage to put a blob on that example there, but it didn't actually create that nice aesthetic when I actually went to put it onto the model itself. There was a little bit of flash left over from the solder, so I used a Dremel just to take away that section and round it off. And this is the finished model. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was the first time I'd ever taken apart a Matchbox model, and also the first time I'd ever used an airbrush, and I really enjoyed the process, so hopefully there'll be some more models on the way. If you know of any other ways to reattach the wheels, please let me know in the comments section below, along with any other tips you might have. And thanks for watching.